Understanding ease is really fundamental to choosing the right size to make from a crochet pattern. Now, first of all, what is ease? Now, I had no idea what it was when I first started, and for quite some time afterwards, because it's one of those things that I just kind of thought, yeah, some people talk about that, whatever, I don't need to worry about it. But ease along with gauge are really, really important fundamentals that you need to know about, especially if you're making things that are designed to fit you. So what is ease, Hannah? Ease is the difference between your actual body measurements and the piece of crochet, the garment that you are making. So in terms of ease, there are three different versions that we have to choose from. The first one is negative ease. Now, negative ease means that the item or the garment that you're making is going to be smaller than your body measurements. So if, for example, you have a 40-inch chest, the item that you're making could well be something like 38. So it's going to be 2 inches smaller than your body. And so those 2 inches are your negative ease. The next option is to have no ease. And that means it measures exactly the same as your body measurements. So a 40-inch chest will have a 40-inch garment, and that will just fit you perfectly. It will not pull you in and it will not be too big. It will be exactly the same as your body measurements. And the third option is to have positive ease, which you've probably guessed already, means it's going to be bigger than your body measurements. So a 40-inch chest, your item may be 42, 44, 46, depending on how much positive ease you are going to have in that garment. Now, as designers, we choose whether something is going to have negative ease, no ease, or positive ease, depending on the style and the fit that we would like. And now we use the Craft Yarn Council sizing guide to find out what those sizings generally are. So, for example, the medium size goes from 36-inch chest to a 38-inch chest. So as a designer, I would say, okay, well, I want this to have positive ease, so I'm going to make sure it's going to measure 40 inches. So that will definitely be bigger. But if you fall into that bracket of a medium with a 36-inch chest, then you're going to have 4 inches of positive ease. And if you have a 38-inch chest and you're still a medium, you will have 2 inches of positive ease. So even within a size bracket, you will have different amounts of ease. It will be bigger or smaller than your measurements depending on where you are within the size bracket. So that's why it's really important to know where you sit within all these measurements. Now, if you look in most patterns, they will say what kind of ease is expected for that garment. Now, it may well give you a range because, as I mentioned, you may well be somewhere within that range. So you might find that something will say it has 4 to 6 inches of positive ease. So you kind of get an idea of how big it will be on you. But it will only be that big on you if you choose the right size from the pattern. So now the next things we need to do is to think about how to look at the schematic in the pattern and how to read it. And then the next thing after that is very exciting because we have to measure ourselves and see where we fit within that schematic. Right, so let's have a look at a schematic in a pattern and see what it's telling us. Now, it's generally just a really simple drawing that shows you all of the different dimensions of the garment so you can figure out which one will fit you best. Now, it's important to remember that this isn't the size that you are. This is the size that the garment will be. So if it's got positive ease, these numbers will be bigger than your body measurements. And if it's got negative ease, they'll be smaller than your measurements. So it generally, depending on the style of the garment, will be something like bust size, width, length, sleeve length, armhole depth, neckline. There'll be loads and loads of different numbers, or if it's a really simple garment, you may only have 2 or 3 different numbers on it. But they're all really important to look at. And then I would encourage you to get a tape measure and go, do you know what? What would that look like on me? How long is that sleeve on me? Does that fit? Will that work? And really think about it. Really think about what these numbers are telling you. So now I'd encourage you to go away and have a look at some different schematics and just familiarize yourself with them, figure out what the numbers are and what they're telling you, what different dimensions you get information for. And then come back and we will do our measurements together, and then we'll be able to compare the two and figure out exactly where you sit within that schematic. Okay, so I'm sorry you now can't see my face, but I thought it was much more important for you to see this part of me while we measure ourselves. So what I want you to do now is go grab a tape measure, pop on something that is fairly snug fitting so you can get your measurements properly, and then come back to me and we'll get measuring. Okay, so what I'm going to suggest that we do is grab a chart or grab a piece of paper and write down your measurements. Now, these measurements may fluctuate, as we all know, throughout time, but if you've got a generalized idea of what your sizings are, that's going to help you in the future to work out which sizings you're going to make. And you just need to do a quick check then when you are ready to make your next project. So the first measurement that we are going to start with is your chest or bust size. So you are going to measure in centimetres or inches, or both, whichever suits you best, because different patterns will tell different things. And you're just going to pop across the widest part of your bust, and you're going to pop the measurement down onto your sheet of paper. And like, again, there's no rocket science to any of this, and I'm sure you've probably done this before, but I really want you to take the time to actually write these down so that you know what you're making. So the next thing we need to do is measure our waistline, and that's our natural waistline. Now that's where I'm showing you here, but sometimes our jeans are so low that that's quite hard to find. So pop around your natural waistline here and just give yourself that measurement, and then you're going to need to add that to your chart too. Now we move on to our hips. And again, we're going to measure at the widest part now of our hips, which will be in a different place for different people. And lots of people think it might be here. This is where your false hips are, where your actual hip bones are. And that's actually tapered in. What we want is this widest part right down here. Because if you're making a garment that is going to be longer than your hip line, you're going to want to make sure that it goes past the widest part and isn't too tight for it. Now, my hips are far wider than my chest, so I need to make sure if I'm making something longer that it will go all the way down and will reach past and fit nicely, because even though then it will be too big for my chest, it will then fit my hips. So now next up, we're going to measure the widest part of our upper arm. And this is important to know for making sleeves and such, because on different people, this measurement will be different to the armhole depth that you might need or want for your sweaters or tops. So it's really important to also then measure what a comfortable armhole depth, so from your shoulder down to where your sleeve will measure. That's also a really good measurement to do on yourself, just from your shoulder tip down to what would be a comfortable position for your sleeve to be, so that you have some movement in your arm there. And the other thing to note about this measurement is that it may not sit right here on your shoulder. If you're making a drop sleeve top, for example, then that measurement will fall down to more like this position. And so just have a measurement of all of you, basically, and find out for which style of garment you might be making, what might fit in what place. So next up, we're going to be doing our wrists here, and that's a really simple measurement to take. And then we're also going to be measuring from our underarm all the way down to your wrist to find out what a good sleeve length for you is. And then obviously, depending on what garments you decide to make and what length the sleeve is, that will be completely adjustable. But it's a really, really good measurement to have and to know, so that you can adjust it accordingly. If you possibly can as well, or if you can get someone to help you to do your midpoint to your arm length, so your cross back measurements as well, that would be really helpful, just so you've got a complete spectrum of what your measurements are that you can put onto your chart. So go ahead, do your measurements, pop them down on your chart, and then come back and we'll catch up again. Now that you've got your measurements written down, and now that we know what the schematic is telling us, what we need to do is have a look and compare the two and figure out where in the grand scheme of it all you are best fitting. Now this might seem like a massive process to go, yeah, I've got a 38-inch chest, so I'm going to make a medium. but it really is worth the effort, I think, because you might find that that designer has done sizing that will mean that that size might not be the right size for you. The armhole depth might not fit you very well. I really think it's worth the effort to figure out exactly where you're going to sit within their sizing brackets so that you can pick the right size of pattern for you. The other great thing about knowing your sizing really well means that if you would like to have more ease or less ease than the garment suggests, you can either size up or size down depending on the schematic and the construction of the pattern. You might have to do some jiggery pokery with it, or it might not be that it's suitable to do that at all. But for some simple constructions, you can absolutely size up or size down, and you will have something that fits you differently to how the designer intended. So once you have all of this knowledge, the world is your oyster, I would say. You don't always have to go, oh, well, I'm a medium, I'll wear a medium, or I always wear a large in the shop, so I'll wear a large in the crochet pattern. You might find, and you might surprise yourself as to which size you need to make. It doesn't matter what the label says on the pattern, it just needs to be the right size to fit you. So I hope that has been helpful. I hope that has made sense. If you have any questions at all, do come and message me. I'm Hanjan Crochet everywhere and anywhere you think to look for me. And I will also include my email at the bottom of this so that you can find me easily too. So thank you very much and good luck.